Welcome to this, the fourth in our series of Totally Teal podcasts, our conversations about teal or next stage organisational thinking. During our last podcast, we explored the idea of industry moving from being a machine towards that of a living system. Now, we want to dive deeper into the types of leadership behaviours that are now emerging as essential requirements when applying this new type of thinking. A lot of research has taken place around the changing face of leadership, so listen in as I ask Giles and Sarah what this actually means on the ground. So, the question we raised in the previous podcast was, what does this new norm actually mean on the ground, in the day-to-day thick of it?
Yes, Chris. And recently, a study I was involved with, actually, with Professor Peter Hawkins at Henley Business School, we engaged with hundreds of different organisations and also looked at all the other global business reports out there and their findings. And what we found essentially we can summarise as three key tipping points that we're facing as leaders and organisations. First, that we're facing multi-dimensional change. So the very nature of change itself is change upon change upon change. These wicked systemic problems mean that we're having to face unceasing transformation, constant change that can't be approached through a mechanistic approach to change management. The second tipping point is that the shift in the organisational dynamic is happening, from seeing the organisation as a machine to seeing the organisation as a living system. That's a profound shift. And then the third dynamic is the shift in leadership itself, from the hero really on shining armour, on the horse going to battle with the sword of certainty and truth leading from the front, to actually the blade and the chalice, being able to hold space for not knowing, for allowing others to be empowered to make change happen, and for emergence to occur, so for a greater sensing and responding.
So in other words, Giles, you're talking about this heroic type of leadership, and perhaps another way of describing that is an ego-dominated style of leadership. And what this change requires is not only shifts in structure, but shifts in leadership away from this ego-dominated heroic style, the one that knows all the answers and leads from the front, where there's a lot of power and control, to one that we might call a more ecologic way of leading. And this style, this ecologic leadership style, is more facilitative. It nurtures, it's networked, it's self-organising, it's intuitive, adaptive, thinks systemically, and also probably encourages a culture of prototyping, experimenting, failing, learning, adapting as its norm.
That's a really critical point, really, this flexibility that lies within the system, which also requires you effectively to learn and listen to what's gone before. And a critical point in terms of understanding the development of teal leadership thinking really resides within the body of this concept. A common misconception of general stage development is that a higher stage replaces or supersedes the previous one. The assumption is then made that one is right and one is wrong. The subtle difference with the teal model, and in some cases not so subtle, is that this is an integrative process which seeks to take the best elements from the previous levels and integrate them into teal practices. This also provides a more acceptable narrative for leaders and organisations today to consider their own unique journeys to teal, bearing in mind their current organisational state. What's also become crystal clear is that the skill sets of tomorrow's leaders are going to require significantly improved capabilities in coaching and conflict resolution, while building their facilitation skills alongside effective governance processes. This really enables people to make speedy, locally appropriate, responsive decisions when they are needed, and that is a fundamental sea change for the power and influence base of command and control leadership.
And I think it's also true to say that while the evolution to, let's call this teal, demands from you a true evolution in your style of leading, a fundamental rewire of the system is also going to be necessary to tap into the extraordinary benefits associated with the agile organisation. And it's this idea that we'll turn to in the next podcast.
So, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, examining the changing face of leadership. And if you would like to explore more of our Totally Teal conversations, then please do subscribe by clicking the button on our Totally Teal channel on Podbean. I look forward to meeting you at our next Totally Teal podcast conversation, where we will be exploring the changing face of organisational development in a next stage organisation. Until the next time, bye.